Alright, hello everybody. I'm Marco. I've been probably in most of your houses cleaning your stoves. For those of you who I have not been in your house, I am a pellet technician here. I also work on our wood and gas units. I do some installs during the busy season. I do some sales during the slow season. So we're here to try and teach you guys some things, answer any questions you may have, and go through some basic maintenance operations of our pellet units. All right, they're a little more complicated than just a wood stove, throwing fire in it and adjusting air. So we figured this will be beneficial for you guys at home, and it'll be beneficial for me because the more you know, the easier my job becomes. All right. Before we get started, we have some paperwork up there. It has name, cell phone, email on it. If you don't mind filling at least those things out. And then if you want to at the end, if you have any comments, concerns, questions about anything, if we do these classes more in the future, anything we could change, anything you'd like to hear, anything you'd like to see, let us know and we'll do the best we can to accommodate that. All right. So first, before I get started, everyone has some pizza, everyone has some drinks, we're all happy? Yeah, perfect. There's a garbage up here if need be. So, who here has a Harman pellet stove? Okay. Who here has a Travis or a Lopi pellet stove? Okay. Anyone have a Ravelli pellet stove? No? Okay. Anyone have something other than those three things I just mentioned? Okay, perfect. All right. So this is a Harman. This is a P68. This is what I'm going to be using to demonstrate most things. For those of you who do have Harmans, yours will have all the same components as this does. So everything I go over with this will apply to your stove. If you do not have a Harman, it may not have exactly all the same components, but it runs almost exactly the same. And maintenance and cleaning and all that is pretty close. If at any point you have any questions for me, if I'm pausing, blurt it out. If I'm in the middle of a sentence, just throw your hand up and I'll make sure to get to you the second I'm done. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'll be louder. I'm Italian, so I'm pretty good at this. Otherwise, let's get into it. So, a pellet stove, how it works. And I'm going to turn this around so you can see some components in it. But all newer pellet stoves work with a combustion fan, or if you have a Travis or a Lopi, it's called an exhaust fan. That starts first. Once that starts, there's a vacuum switch. That vacuum switch basically has a little diaphragm balloon in it, and that's going to tell the stove that it's at the proper negative pressure inside of it. Once that disc tells the stove it's at the proper pressure, your auger, and if you have an igniter, your igniter turn on. So those things will turn on, start feeding pellets, the igniter lights it. Once fire has been established, there's usually, in Harmans, there's an ESP probe, the exhaust probe, little pointy silver thing in the back, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see it here, but it'll be right in the exhaust. We'll get there. It'll be right in the exhaust, right in here, for those who are in the front row. This is your combustion fan. Your igniter's housed up a little more. This is the distribution fan. In a Lopi, it is called the convection fan. So, most importantly, with these is maintenance, cleaning, keeping up with it. A little more so than you would with a wood stove. Everyone's following me so far? Perfect. So most importantly with these, they need fuel, obviously. We carry softwood, hardwood, blends, pretty much anything you want in life. For the most efficient burn in Harmans and honestly all pellet stoves, you want a softwood pellet. Try and go with a premium, super premium. There are some areas you can cheap out with the stove and go saving a little money. Fuel is not one I would cheap out on, okay? The type of fuel you use will determine how much you have to clean it weekly, a couple times a week if you're using real sooty hardwood. And the BTUs you're going to get out of it will be much higher with the softwood, which means you get more heat in the house with less fuel. So, you save, even though you're spending more, at the end of the day, you're going to save some money putting a good fuel in these guys. So, good fuel goes in there, turn the stove on, everything runs, combustion fan feeds it, you're running, you're going, you're doing good. I think when I do the installs, I tell everyone here, on average, about every week you're gonna have to clean it. All right, a lot of you have probably heard my spiel about it, so just forgive me if you're gonna hear it again tonight. So, when you clean these stoves, like I said, I recommend cleaning them every week. Let me start turning this around while I'm talking, so I don't have to do that. Cleaning these stoves, you really need just a few tools. Harmon gives you a scraper. Some of you I've had the conversation with. I like to use a wood chisel. You could use a flathead screwdriver. Anything that is going to scrape the burn pot really well. Okay. Next tool you want, paintbrush. It's going to get all the ash and soot off the inside of the stove body. Ash and soot are abrasive and corrosive. So if you were to just run your stove and never clean it, that ash and soot is actually going to start eating away at the metal in there, the burn pot, the fan blades, the glass. So that's why you want to do cleanings, keep it up to snuff. You know, we spend a lot of money on these. You don't want to just kill it in 5 years. You know, we want them to last 15, 20, 25 years if possible. So, and if at any point I'm going over something, you can't see it, feel free to come up, preferably like 5 at a time, not all 50 of you. But let's get into it. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So the ash and the soot, it's not just in the places we can see, it's going through the pipes and stuff, right?
It's going through all that. It is.
So what do you do about that?
So, these stoves have, the combustion fan is blowing outwards. All right, so it's not a natural draft system like a wood stove. A wood stove you just plug in, and because of the height and the heat and everything, there's natural draft that's happening. The pellet stove, if you have an insert or you have something with height, there is some natural draft in that, but you have the exhaust fan that's blowing it. You're gonna get a lot of that blown out of it. If you ever see when your stoves first light up, you kind of see that plume of smoke and some ash and soot come out of there. Otherwise, the way to deal with that is you get your yearly cleanings. When we come to your house, we do our yearly cleanings. The ones of you who I have seen, or you've seen RJ or Derek or any of us, we come there with a big rod set. It looks like it's in a golf bag. And we run those rods through, you know, either 3 feet of pipe or 35 feet of pipe, whatever you have. Once we hit your cap or the end of it, we attach it to our drill, and it's tight in there, and it starts spinning, and it kind of helps it all get taken out. Then we vacuum it out, we blow it out, we get it out as best as we can. All right? Does that answer that?
Yep.
Perfect.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
On the, I'm going back a little bit.
You do what you gotta do.
With the pellets, the hard pellets.
Yep.
There's no advantage to that, they don't burn longer?
Hardwood pellets, no. Hardwood pellets, so when you think of,
Soft's better, definitely.
yeah, when you think that softwood is 100% better. So you think of a log, a hardwood log and a softwood log. A hardwood log is more dense. Now when you think of pellets, it's a compressed sawdust. They don't have any glue or anything in it, they just compress it as hard as they can. So they're compressing the same softwood or hardwood. So at the end of the day, a softwood, when it's compressed and that much tighter, you know, you might, I'm just throwing out numbers, but you might be able to get 2 logs in a pellet worth of sawdust, where you might only get 1 log of hardwood sawdust. So it ends up the same size, you know, so it's, softwood will always be better for you. All right, if you burn,
do either or, right?
Harmons, Lopis, Rebellis that I mentioned, they'll all burn anything. Now, no one raised their hand for Rebelli, so I won't get too deep into it, but like a Rebelli, if you had hardwood and you switched to softwood, I'd have to reprogram your stove, because these are pre-programmed with the control board. The Rebellis, I actually have access to every setting, every RPM of the stove, of the motors, of the augers, of everything. So once you change fuel type or fuel size or anything like that, we would have to come. I have a handy dandy laptop, I plug it into the computer and I start adjusting all your settings. These, for the most part, you'll be able to run it on anything. The one caveat I'll give you is a softwood. If you got like a Douglas fir softwood, you're probably cleaning once a week every Saturday. You might even find some Saturdays you're like, there's barely anything in here. You switch to like a hardwood or a hardwood softwood blend that's maybe not the best, and you'll be like, I'm scraping this burn pot and cleaning dust out of here every 3 days. And that's completely normal. That has everything to do with fuel type. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I got a question on
Yeah.
that filling.
Mhm.
Like I got a computer on mine.
Yep, the touch screen up
Yeah,
top.
I'm like 80% I gotta do off the whole cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And I got like hardly anything
In here?
Yeah, it's like not even an inch.
What are you burning for pellets?
I forgot the name I bought them here.
I know you showed me when I was there, I just can't remember off the top of my
He
head.
named a couple of them.
Matra, Woods and Sons.
Woods and Sons.
Woods and Sons, yep, I know we talked
There's
about.
not much ash in there.
No, those are good. The only thing I'll say about Woods and Sons, two things. It's not a Douglas fir, it's a pine. Matra, there's Matra and Woods and Sons, which are very comparable. One is a northern white pine, one's a southern yellow pine. The only two things I'll say about those, which I get complaints from customers, is when you do a cleaning, sometimes you'll just get a black film right over the glass, which I'll be honest, you could literally take a paintbrush, do this, and your window's just as clean as it was. So it's not anything that's sticky, it's not a grease, so it's just a product of the soot. The other thing, which does happen sometimes with those pellets that are made out of pines, is that you get, high temperatures in the stove, the hopper is far away, but there's heat that goes in the hopper. Pine naturally has pitch in it, so every once in a while, you'll see like a sticky film in your hopper that happens from those pellets. And this could be not just those two, anything that uses a pine, this could happen. And then what happens is, all of a sudden the pellets are sticking rather than falling down. All you have to do is get a can of mineral spirits and a rag, wipe it in there, it'll clean it like it was brand new. All right. Besides that, they're great pellets. High BTUs, low ash content. I know Norm and I did a little experiment a year or two ago because a lot of the companies with pellets will tell you their ash percentage. So what we did is we wanted to know. So we actually would burn a 40-pound bag, clean the stove, and put it in a mason jar. Then burn the next 40-pound bag, clean the stove, put it in a mason jar. So we'd actually visually get to see. Because if I tell you, brand A has 0.4% ash and brand B has 0.2% ash, that doesn't mean much to you. So, you could go over to the pellet station over there when we're all done, and you could see the different mason jars with ash, and that gives you a visual of what they're actually doing.
What do you say is the best that you have here? I like that the best.
You like Woods and Sons? Okay. Woods and Sons is a great one.
Stole, but I want the best you got.
Okanagan is a really good one. Lacrete is a great pellet. Now Lacrete, you're going to look at the price of it and think it's higher than the others, which it is a little bit. But keep in mind that Lacrete comes 60 bags, so it's actually 2,400 pounds, rather than every other pellet comes in 50 bags, which is a ton, 2,000. So that's why there's a little premium on that, because you're getting an extra 400 per skid.
That's right.
So, all right. Any other questions about pellets?
What is the concrete made from?
Lacrete is a softwood. I think it's a Douglas fir. Is Derek here?
I don't remember.
Ron, do you know what Lacrete's made out of wood?
It comes from like Idaho, western pine, but it's not a Doug fir.
That's not a Doug fir, right? No, okay. But that is a premium softwood pellet. All right. Any other pellet questions?
The pallets, they must try to maintain quality control, but every year they must vary a little bit. Like you might have one.
There is
great
varying,
experience,
if
and then the
say
next
you
year-
ordered 4 tons from us, you get 4 pallets. There might be some bags that are a little more dusty. Every once in a while, there's a bag that split open from something happening, and you'll see the pellets clumped up. What I always say, if you buy pellets from another company, I can't really help you in that regards. If you buy pellets from us, say at the end of the season you had 4 bags that were just unusable, they had baseball, softball size clumps in it or something like that. When you call the schedule for your cleaning, just let Cheryl know, say, hey, I got 4 bags of this brand, they're real trashy, can you help me out? And when I come do the cleaning, I'll usually bring 4 bags. If I can do the same one, I will, otherwise I'll do something comparable, and we'll swap them out for you. But there's always going to be a little bit of,
But
variance
the
to that
material
stuff.
that they make the pallets from, the wood, there must be some variations from year to year.
With like the quality of it.
Yeah, well, just the, so they use the exact same type of tree every single year, they don't
So
blend it?
a lot of those companies, if they do, they're getting from mills that use that tree, and that's the sawdust they're getting. There's different brands like Northern Warmth is a specific one I could think of, where they have their purple bag is a Douglas fir. They have a black bag which is a blend softwood, and they'll put on it may contain pine, Douglas fir, and this or that. They have a hardwood softwood blend. They have a straight hardwood pellet. So some brands will have, you know, a variety of different types of pellet under that brand.
And some of the manufacturers belong to the Pellet Fuel Institute, correct?
Yes, yep, you'll see their PFI stamp on it and all
So
that.
they are held to
A certain standard, exactly,
So you
exactly.
wanna look for that on your pellet?
Yes, if you can, you know, look for that PFI stamp. There's another big one out there, but there's usually a stamp either on the bottom, whether it's the front or the back, bottom right or left. But they'll have a stamp that tells you the BTUs, the ash content, which those are the two big numbers I always tell people to pay attention to. And then it'll give you, you know, wood type and some other things, moisture content, which the PFI standard I think is, you know, 0.02% or lower for those. So it'll give you all that information on the back.
Can you touch base a little bit on this new coffee bean shells or?
The coffee bean pellets. Okay, so I'm very excited about those. I should have known because I do this as a living, but my first thought was, oh, is my house gonna smell like coffee? But it's a closed system, so it doesn't. You know, you don't smell burning wood, so you're not gonna smell burning coffee. So that was disappointing for me. But as far as the pellet itself, actually when they first came out, we got a couple samples here. And then I went later that week to Harmon training in Pennsylvania, and I asked them about the coffee pellet. And they actually, literally within hours of me asking, they saw the bags outside, and I guess their R&D just got them and they just started testing them. In saying that, they are a newer product, so there's, you know, the BTUs are high, the ash content's fairly low, so in that regard it's really good. I would say, as a professional technician, my only hesitation about it is, you know, I think they're 13.5 or something for their BTUs. Our highest wood pellet is like 8.9, you know, 9,000 BTUs, so that's almost a 20% increase in BTUs. My worry is some of the stoves, which this really wouldn't apply to, you know, the Harmons and the really solidly built stoves, but, you know, some people have, you know, stoves that were from Lowe's or something else, and they just have little sheet metal plates and baffles. My worry is that high of a BTU might start warping some things. Unfortunately, like I said, it is a newer product, so I don't have like a solid answer for you. But from what I have heard from people that have burned them from that Harmon R&D, they're burning great, they're looking great, they're not having issues. If you are worried about that because you might have thin sheet metal pieces, then what they instructed me to do was tell you to mix them. So, you know, if you usually burn 4 tons, get 2 tons of coffee, 2 tons of wood, and start mixing them up in your hopper.
What are the price on the coffee?
That
High,
Yeah, it's that.
very high.
Yeah, they come with a premium. You know, it's like I said, you're getting almost 20-25% more heat out of them. You know, so a pound of coffee pellets versus a pound of wood pellets, you're getting more heat. In saying that, do you have a Harmon, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were to get coffee pellets and you were to start burning them, the first thing I would tell you, do you have an analog controls or do you have the touchscreen on top? Okay, turn your feed rate down. It's usually at 3 or 4, turn it down to 2 or 3. All right, it'll feed a little less. That way you'll get more bang for the buck out of it, and
I
you won't
haven't
be.
tried it yet, so.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
curious.
no, it's a good question, because they are newer. You know, they only started coming out about 4 or 6 months ago.
I don't think we've gotten any yet either.
No, we only got the samples,
Yeah.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
So, any other questions regarding fuel pellets? Dan?
The like ash or the dust that comes with like the pellets like in the bag, is that anything that I should worry about? Because like,
So-
a lot of times I'll see like a lot of dust in with the pellets.
Great question. Especially a great question, you know, starting around COVID time, I feel like a lot of these companies have had some QC issue, quality control issues. And the fact that, you know, some brands that when I first started, we wouldn't even see a speck of dust in them ever. Now we're seeing a little dust here and there. And so the Harmons, they do have a sawdust trap. So basically your pellets drop anything that's too fine, it pushes off to the side, and anything that's big enough to keep moving forward, moves forward. As far as Travis low-pi stoves, they don't have that. You just gotta be very diligent and about once a month cleaning the bottom of the hopper. But another recommendation, which we've started coming up with in the past year or so, since this issue has been popping up a little more, is we even have like those big buckets over there, but get a big bucket, a big tub, you know, those tubs you put clothes in I've seen people use. I've seen people use wooden chests. But pour your pellets directly into something else. That way the dust is going to start settling in that. And then you scoop them out of that container and put them in your hopper. That way when you have to vacuum something out, the dust out of something, you're vacuuming it out of that versus this. Because the tub is, you know, a couple bucks. This is not, you know. But good question.
We use Maine woods, and I notice watching it go into the hopper on a regular basis, they appear to be glazed or a little shiny. And then I get a bag that looks like they aren't shiny. They sort of, is that moisture that's gotten into it?
It could be. Actually all the pellets we carry, I could say, don't put like an adhesive or anything in it. And most pellets don't. I know there are a few random brands that might. They should say it on it if it does.
But it seems like it might be coming apart. That's already, you know, even before we get them into the hopper.
Yeah. So when you see that, and it's when you're looking through here you see it, or when you're pouring it in. And it could be moisture. It could, you know, there's a few things that could be affecting it.
And how much of that do you get before you affect the ability to stove?
So what I would always say is, you know, I put, when someone asks if their pellets are good, I basically pull a handful out and I start breaking them with my fingers. If they kind of just snap, I know they're fine. When pellets get wet, does anyone remember in the 80s and 90s they had those little tablets for July 4th that you light on fire and they become like big worms?
Yes.
That's what pellets look like when they get wet. They start expanding, and if I put one in water, it would expand like that. So I mean, if you see it like that, I would try and do everything I could to not put it in the stove. If you happen to, I mean, one of two things: it clogs it, your auger isn't spinning, and you need to vacuum it out. Or like I said, if you're dumping it into another container first, you can kind of visually see that as you're scooping it, and you know, throw it in a bag. Or I know personally, if I've had bad pellets, I put them to the side, and when I do outside fires in the summer, they go in the base of it and keep the fire going a little better. You know, that's really the best advice I have for that. You had your hand up before.
So, when you were talking about the little pan in the back that.
The sawdust trap, fine strap?
Yeah. How often should that be cleaned?
Okay, so a couple things about that is the older Harmon stoves, the auger motor used to have a chain drive. If your auger motor has a chain drive on it, it needs to be cleaned at least once a season. If you have a professional cleaning done, we always clean that. If you have a newer stove, they changed how the auger system worked, so there's no more worry of that chain drive snapping. If that were to pack up, then what the auger does is it actually cuts off little pieces of it and it'll push it forward and burn it out. So the newer stoves, if you go to a Harmon training, they'll tell you, you could go the life of that stove without ever changing out that fine strap. Now the reason why that's pretty cool is because that fine strap is very important to the airflow of the stove. If anyone's ever changed it themselves, I can't even get you a good view of it. But it's a little door that has a hole on the top of it, and then there's a piece that slides up behind it. You need to get that on properly. If I ever did it crooked, or I didn't have that slid in and it was just up on top of it, you're gonna get a 2-blink status with your stove, which is telling you have an airflow issue. And then, you know, I go there, I check a whole bunch of things with your pipe, the inside of the stove, and all that's good. So then I just reach up and I fix that thing and close it, and we're done. You know, a service call later. So I don't, during my installs, I don't really recommend to have a customer clean it, just because you can open up a can of worms that'll give you more headaches than needed. You know, so if you have an old stove with a chain drive, you know, and you're not getting your yearly cleanings from us, make sure you clean it at the end of the season. If you don't have a chain drive, which it looks like a bicycle chain on the back. If there's no bicycle chain on the back, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it when we go.
I think we have maybe time for one more question. It's about 6:30. So
Perfect. Thank you. I gotta keep moving on. One more question.
Back to the dust in the hopper.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I let the hopper run down almost empty.
Yeah.
Because the pellets don't, the hopper is
Yes.
sharp enough.
Yeah.
Cold enough. But I run it down almost empty, and then I push everything down towards the auger.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just put more pellets in.
So it's a touch, so it's all down there.
All down there, and then it pushes it as it needs to be where it needs to go. Yeah, that's not bad. Or same thing, I know some people who, they'll just run it, and, once a month they'll run it down to nothing. They'll vacuum out their hopper, they'll clean as good as they can, and then they just fill it back up. So any of those are viable options that are good for the stove. Okay? So, I'm going to move on to operations. Okay. So, most of us here have Harmons. I'm going to ask one more question. Who has a touch screen on their stove? Okay, a good amount of you. Now, when you guys got your stove installed, you should have gotten a packet, big bag. It has a colorful front and back paper in it. That's basically like a cheat sheet for the touchscreen. All right, so if you don't have that, if you need it, write it on your comments. I'll send it out to you. All right, otherwise, most of the stuff I'm going to go over today is going to be with the analog. I will touch on the touchscreen a little bit.
We also have both of those videos up on YouTube now.
And yes, and we actually, as of today, for the past few months, we've been recording videos, primarily on Harmons, but we're also touching on the Lopis, and upcoming after this season, we'll do the Rebellis as well. But we're doing cleaning for each stove. So the P Series, the Absolute, the XXV, or the 25th anniversary stove, and the inserts as well. They'll all have their own videos, and then I have a video that goes over the analog controls, and I have a video that goes over the touchscreen. So if you follow us on Facebook, I think they're being posted on
Yeah,
there.
we'll post them on Facebook once they're on. I know that the touchscreen video and the analog control video are both on YouTube right now.
Perfect.
So if they looked us
So
up
if
on
you want
YouTube,
to follow
they'll
us on our YouTube page, it's Higgins Energy.
Yeah,
Right?
Higgins Energy Alternatives. I will be sharing them to our Facebook page.
And then once they're up, they'll be shared on our Facebook page. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And then, like I said, we're going to be doing them for all the brands, and we have. If you send me some questions and I get a bunch of the same questions, I can make a video about that as well. All right. I know in today's day and age, I can't always get everyone here for a class every week, so we're trying to keep up with the times. All right. I'm going to turn this a little bit. I'm going to touch on real quick what I was talking about before with our cleanings, actually, before we go over this. So, our primary tools, they give you the scraper. I use a wood chisel. You could also use a nice sharp flathead screwdriver. Paintbrush, 1.5, 2-inch paintbrush. And then I like a bottle brush. The last thing, which if I've been in your house, I probably talked about it with you. I have this little electronic blower. I like this one because I can adjust the RPMs. You could also just get like a can that you clean keyboards with, and that'll be very helpful as well. Now, and I'm going to go over some cleaning right now. So, what I do weekly on this stove, pick a day, any day you want, and like I said, if you burn some hardwood pellets, some cheaper pellets, you might be doing it every 3 days, but let's just say on average you're going to clean weekly. 3 weeks out of the month, spend 5-10 minutes or less. Once you really get a program going, 1 week out of the month, you might be closer to 20 minutes, half an hour. So, every Harmon stove has an ash pan. I'm just going to put that there for now. So, weekly, and you guys probably can't see at the angle I have this, but the burn pot is where the pellets come down and the fire happens. Alright, so weekly you're going to want to take your scraper, and you're going to want to scrape that burn pot pretty much as you can. You will not hurt it, you will not, ruin it by scraping it too much. You can never maintain these too well. There's also this flame guide that sits on top of the burn pot. I'll take this and I'll give this a scrape sometimes because you've got some carbon buildup on it from the pellets and the burning. There's a plate under your burn pot. There's usually 2 wing nuts there. You loosen those, this plate comes off. Alright? Once this plate is off, you have access to inside the burn pot. I'll take either this flame guide or this plate, bang on the burn pot. If you had a hard week, take your aggression out on that burn pot, all right? It is a thick piece of cast. When I went and trained at Harmon, Roy there told me to give his name. He said, if you can break that burn pot by tapping on it, he will pay for your new one, okay? He guaranteed me you cannot do it. So, you bang on that burn pot because your igniter is housed inside of it. So sometimes soot and ash will fall through those holes and sit on top of the igniter. And like I said before, I think I said before, is ash and soot are amazing insulators. So what happens is it blocks the airflow inside of the burn pot, which isn't allowing the heat to get up to the pellets. So we probably have anywhere from 10 to 30 calls every winter of my igniter died, you need to get here right away. And I get there and I test it and I put my hand over the burn pot and it's real nice and hot. Igniters work like light bulbs. Light bulbs don't dim out before they die. One day you flip the switch and it's just not working. Same thing with the igniter. It's not going to get lower in temp and then die. It just works one day and then when its life is done, it doesn't work. All right? So I clean inside of there. I bang on it like I said. I get my vacuum in there. And then I'll take my little air gun and I'll keep your vacuum close because once you blow in there, it's going to come out fast. All right, so then I'll blow inside that burn pot, get all the ash and soot I can. If anything's left, I'll use my finger, get it out.
Yeah.
That's clean, that's good to go. Okay? That's one of the most important parts to keep cleaning your stove. If it's full of ash, it's full of carbon on top, your stove won't light. It's going to act really weird. You might have a real lazy flame. It's going to cause a lot of issues. So, we clean that burn pot, scraped around. Next thing I do weekly is grab your paintbrush. You're going to clean the sides, the back, these bricks. The P68 has 3 bricks. The 61 I think is 3 bricks as well. And then the 43 has 1 brick turned horizontally. All right, so you just brush those bricks off. Most important part of brushing is the top. The heat exchangers up here. Again, ash and soot are amazing insulators. If you were not to clean the stove for like 4 months and you just let it burn and burn and burn, you could walk by it in like February and be like, is that blowing cold air at me? And it might be, because the heat exchanger is insulated. So when the distribution fan is trying to blow air at you, the heat isn't heating this metal up, so the air is not coming out hot. It's coming out a little cooler. So if you ever feel cool air blowing from your stove or cooler than usual, brush the top. You'll notice a big change in the heat. All right. Aside from that, brush the sides, brush the back. All these P-series stoves have a little plate blocking the fan. Take that to the side. Very gently brush the fan off. All right. And then what I do is I take a little tool and I'll put it right between the fan blades and I'll scrape the back of the stove, or back behind that fan blade, because sometimes you'll get carbon buildup, you'll get ash and soot. If you had a power outage, you could get creosote buildup back there. So you want to get anything that might be behind this fan blade causing resistance, so that way your fan is spinning at the optimal RPMs. And then lastly, I'll use a bottle brush, which looks like this if you didn't know. And I will go right in this exhaust port. And you'll just try and clean out as best as you can. If you have that air gun, when you're all done, blow it. If you have a direct vent, you'll see outside, you'll see everything start blowing out. Very satisfying. Otherwise, if you have a shop vac, an ash vac, anything like that, they usually come with attachments that you can put in there and get all that ash out of there. Yes, sir?
I have the XXV.
Mm-hmm.
On the exhaust port right there, how far in?
The XXV has a fan off to the side of it, so you're not going to be able to, like this one, you could see right through to the exhaust. Yours, you won't. Yours, you're going to see like a fan off to the side, so for basically the bottle brush, you just clean in there as best as you can.
How far in do you reach in there? Or should you not?
I would say 9 to 11 inches.
Okay.
And then after that, there's just nowhere to go, because it goes off to the sand.
Right, so
the
there's
fan and the
nothing in
fan
there
blocks
that's
it.
gonna get
Nope.
damaged or?
The only thing, which was what I was about to say, is about 7 inches back, you have the ESP probe in all Harman stoves. In the inserts, it's behind the combustion fan, right by where your cradle is. In all the freestanding ones, it's usually before the right after the combustion fan, about 7 inches back. But what you do want to be careful of is, where's my brush? When I brush in here, I don't jam up because the ESP is always on the top half of the square. All right? You could let the brush rub by it and clean off it a little bit. When we come do our yearly cleanings, we will clean it off. We use the wire brush and get it all nice and spiffy and looking new. But you just don't want to bend that, because if you end up poking upwards and bending that, we're going to have a heck of a time getting it out and cleaning it, and it's going to cause other issues, and we'll be able to do it, but it's just a headache for you and for us.
Okay.
All right, so just be wary of that ESP probe in Harman stoves. Yes,
So
ma'am?
what did you say that you used to clean out behind the fan in there?
You could use any flat tool, honestly.
Oh.
This would fit in here.
Okay.
Anything that you could get in between the fan blades and just scrape behind it. Okay? So 3 weeks out of the month, scrape the burn pot, brush off everything, I'll clean back here quickly. The 1 week out of the month that's a little more involved, I'm gonna take out the bricks, I'm gonna get behind there, I'm gonna take everything out that comes out. You still do the same things that you're doing every other week, you're just being a little more meticulous. All right, with the XXB stoves and your monthly cleaning, towards the back of the stove, underneath your distribution fan sits there. I always suggest vacuuming there, especially if you have pets, cats, log fur dogs, anything like that. It's pulling cool air from under it, and fur and dust are gonna get pulled up in there. Blocks those ventings, eventually your motor overheats. So, you know, the cleaner you keep everything, the longer your components last. Okay? Any questions about cleaning, weekly, monthly? Yes, sir?
I have an insert. Do I have access to the fan, and how do I get?
So what, do you have a 52i or a 35i?
It's the big one, right?
It's the bigger one, so you have 52i. All right, so you have that little ash lip on front?
Yeah.
Not that, do you get your yearly cleanings from us?
Haven't had one yet.
Okay, so it's a newer install. So what I would say is make sure you get your yearly cleanings. If it's a new install, feel free to pull up a chair, sit right next to me while I do everything. I'll show you it, I'll go over it as I'm doing it. And then you decide from there, do I want to do this, or am I going to have Marco come back every year? You know, there is a way to pull those inserts out, basically whether it's the 35i, 52i, or now the 42i. You pull that ash lip off, and there's usually clips near there. Otherwise, they might be a little further up if you have like an old eccentric insert or something like that. But the Harman inserts are really cool because you actually can pull the entire unit out, and then there's a cradle there with the exhausting. Some of the other, you know, Travis, you know, the low-pi stoves and some other brands, their inserts are pretty much stuck there, and then you have a liner, so you can only pull as much as that liner is going to give you that space. Sometimes it's 2-3 inches. The Harman stove I can pull out and put it on that side of the room if I wanted. So it's a little easier to deal with that. As far as, you know, scraping behind the fan, that you don't have to worry about as much. There is an exhaust port on the right side of behind those plates. Get an air gun and blow into it once in a while. Okay? And that'll help that. Anyone else?
Yeah, if you're cleaning the outside pipe with a brush, how far in can we go?
With like a bottle brush like mine, or with like rods and a brush like we clean?
I just have a brush that I long handle.
I mean, it really depends on how far your exhausting is and exactly what kind of unit you have. But you know, if you have 3 feet of piping, I'd say you could probably go in about 3.5 feet. All right, you could always go in a little further because there's an adapter before you'll hit that ESP probe in the stove. Anyone else? All right, perfect. So we did weekly cleanings, we did monthly cleanings. The last most important cleaning is getting your yearly cleaning done. Whether you call us and have us do it, or you're a professional yourself and you want to get it done. Maintenance is key with these things. So when we come do the cleanings, we're doing all the things I just mentioned, and we're also cleaning the back components. You have the distribution fan, which, like I said, is going to collect a lot of dust and fur, and we have nice little brushes that get in between all the fins, and we get all that cleaned up so your fan can really go at its full RPMs. While we're there, you know, we check the efficiency of all the components. If anything needs to be replaced, we can. Yes, sir?
Should you keep that door open? Lights like
Blinding you? Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. So when we come, you know, we check, make sure all the components are good and up to snuff. If they're not, we tell you, you know, this may need to be replaced in the next few years. I could do it now if you'd like. If it's something we carry in the truck, we'll do it that day. If we have to order it, we can come back for you. You know, I know I've had a lot of conversations with customers where I say, this fan's getting a little noisy, it'll be fine, you know, educated guess, you'll be good through the end of the season, but keep an eye on it, because, you know, I can never guess it down to the day. You know, I could walk out of the house and 2 weeks later it decides to cease. You know, or it could be, you know, 4 years later it decides to cease. It's just an educated guess on what we know. But maintenance is key with these, cleaning the components in the back. We do the sawdust trap, and then the last thing we always do when we leave is we test fire your stoves. The important thing that tells us is, you know, A, that all the components are working how they should, but then we also get to watch the flame and make sure the airflow is proper in it, and if it's not, we can adjust it and do what we need to do, and you know, there's a little dial and rheostat in the control board, there's dip switches that could change settings, so if you have us come, we could get into all those things and keep your stove running at its most efficient through the year, so that's a very important part of the maintenance. Yes, sir?
A
question on the feed limit.
Mhm.
Might have changed it because I had it running regular, now I just let it run whenever it wants to go on.
Okay.
What, there's a number on it, like 65 says default.
4.
It's like in the middle. And now, how do I know to put more or less, like how it should burn?
So, with the feed limit of the stoves, the analog and the touchscreen, you can touch both. The first thing I'm gonna say about that is that feed limit switch only adjusts the feed once there's fire established in your stove. So basically the easiest way to remember that is if this fan is blowing, then touching that knob does something. If this fan isn't blowing, then touching that knob doesn't help you. There's settings within the control board that are dip switch settings. Again, that's something we would do when we were there, but that would adjust the initial feed rate before the lights. So if your stove usually runs well and all of a sudden it's pouring out pellets before a fire hits, A, it's probably dirty, so it needs a good cleaning, and that should fix it. But B, adjusting that feed rate wouldn't even do anything because there's no fire established yet. Now, if you're having an issue with unburnt fuel falling off the burn pot before it's fully burnt, that's when adjusting that may help. Older stoves, they always said keep it at 3. Newer stoves, they say 4. When we do our installs, we always test fire it, we watch how it burns, how it's running. If I think it needs to be adjusted, I will adjust it there. I usually tell people, unless there's a reason, you're losing fuel or something, kind of forget it exists.
Yeah, I want to get it back to where it was, I don't remember.
4. 4 is the way to go.
I don't have a number, ours is like computerized.
So you have the touchscreen?
Yeah. It's just-
65%.
That's where that.
65%.
That's where it says.
Mhm.
But I went online real quick, because I didn't know, and they said to put it at 75. Does it matter?
I don't know.
Does that make a big
I also
difference?
know there's the Allure 50, which is if you guys are done and take a walk around, it's the red stove. So that one is a little higher. That one might be 72.
It says 65 right where like.
That's where the initial arrow
Yeah,
is on the bottom.
default, it says that?
Yeah.
65, but in the computer someone said 75.
If you see that so your burn pot has a slope to it, you basically want your pellets when they're burning to be right where the burn pot straightens out. If they're much lower in that, in the slope of the burn pot, then turn it up a little bit.
Okay.
And if
So
they're
keep it
falling
at
off,
this
then you
level.
turn it down. Exactly. You want it to right where it's
How
almost
about the
level.
old ash if that falls off, that's no.
That's fine. That's what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
Yep. As the pellets come out, it's going to push that old ash. When the
Yeah.
fire dies out, you'll have that little like
It's
fence
a
of
little
ash
cloudy,
going there.
that will
Yeah.
come off
Exactly.
naturally.
Exactly. That's fine.
So about right where the level pipe.
Right where it's getting level. That's right where you want it to be when you're washing it. All right.
Marco,
Yes, ma'am.
one question right here.
Who do I see
Change
next?
the constant burn on it, you need to change the feed limit also?
Yes, so so what the feed limit actually does is it sets the maximum feed that it would need and call for. So how they explain it is basically it's 1 through 6 on the analog controls. Every number is every 10 seconds. So if you had it set to 6, then at a maximum, the auger could spin for 60 seconds out of 60 seconds. So we usually set it to 4. So at a maximum, like if your room was, 40 degrees and we set it to 95, it might run 40 seconds out of every minute. And it doesn't mean 40 seconds, altogether. It would be, 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there, 2 seconds there. But out of a minute time, it'll run for 40 seconds. So in saying that, I wouldn't, unless you have a reason that is telling you that you need to adjust it, I wouldn't touch it. Some people say, I want to save some fuel, so I turned it down to 1. You're gonna save maybe a bag of pellets a year, which is $8, and then your combustion fan's working harder, the igniters, doesn't have enough fuel to light, and you're causing the components to work harder to save $8, and you might end up replacing a $400 part. So I have a hard time agreeing with people that want to do it for that reason. But like I said, if it's overflowing while it's burning and you want to turn it down a little, yes, sure. I really would never turn it much below 2, because then you're starving the fire of fuel and you're forcing creosote buildup in your pipe. Once you get more buildup in the pipe, then you're gonna have airflow issues and other things like that, service calls and all that fun stuff.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
When you open up the thing to put the pellets in,
Hopper?
I noticed, you said it to me when you first went, I shouldn't open it when it's at the bottom, like, and it's burning low, because it sparkles
Yes,
up
so-
and everything.
so-
You can put in the pellets.
So the Harman does have a slide plate that's meant to prevent burn back, which is the fire going from the burn pot into the auger and into the hopper. But the biggest thing I always tell people, power outages. You know, your combustion fan dies out if you don't have a battery backup or you don't have a generator. So your stove is gonna start kind of smoking from wherever the smoke can escape, even the hopper lid. I always tell people, no matter what, do not open that hopper lid. Because once you do that, you're introducing a big rush of air. And fire likes oxygen, so it's gonna follow it, and if you have fire in your hopper, you need a new stove. So you wanna prevent that as much as possible. Now, if you need to fill your stove while it's running, yeah, you know, I'll open it up, I'll put them in, and I'll close it. I never let the stove burn for a long time with the hopper lid open. Newer stoves have a sensor there anyways, so if it's open, it kind of cuts the auger from working, so it tries to prevent that. It's one of the safety features in it, but it's, you know, if you need to put fuel in it, yeah, put fuel in it, but it's, I wouldn't sit all day with it open.
No, but I noticed when it's low, it really sparks.
Yeah, you'll
up.
see it.
And I don't like that. I
Yeah.
like to keep it clean.
It's nerve-wracking, yeah.
I gotta do it once a morning.
Exactly.
But when it's burning hot, I don't notice anything. Really cheap.
It's when it starts getting low right
Yeah,
there.
you see
You
it's
really
not-
start running out of fuel and it's kind of
Yeah.
a low fire, yeah. Yeah, that'll happen.
But
And
you can still do it when it's running.
yeah. Actually,
It's all really
Harman in the past few, 5 years or so, they've made their stove. So they even, if you go and follow Harman's YouTube, they have a video where you're supposed to be able to clean this while it's lit. I personally don't like it because it's fire, it's hot, and who wants to, play with fire in their house? But you are supposed to, by right, you could turn the stove on in November and let it run till February. I personally would say turn it off on Saturdays or whatever day you pick, clean it, make sure it's cool. You have your maintenance, have it cooled off. I use shop vacs when cleaning. I find they have really good suction, so that's why I like it. They do have ash vacs though, which we have one right here. We have another brand over there. And these have they have no combustibles in it. So, as much as I wouldn't suggest sucking up a full fire, if an ember went in here, you're not burning down your whole vacuum. If an ember goes in my shop vac, we need a new shop vac. And then Ron's not happy with me that day. The couple things I like about these ash vacs, aside from having non-combustibles, this one solved the issue of your filter getting all dirty by putting in a shaker rod in it. So every once in a while you just want to do that, and you'll get all the ash and soot off your ash vac. They're really cool though. If you have any questions, concerns about these afterwards, when we're all done, come up to me, go to any of the salesmen during the day, and we'll help you with that.
What was it you said that stops the fire from going up the auger?
So there's a couple things. The way these stoves feed is a little better, and then there's a slide plate up top. So if you were to ever turn your stove on when it was empty and look in the hopper, you're gonna see a plate that moves back and forth. And there's a little lip on it, so basically when it comes this way, pellets fall, then it pushes them, then it goes back this way. And so it's to prevent too much oxygen. So if you were to look at like old low-pi stoves, their hopper, it's just a hole where the auger spins. There's nothing blocking that. So once you open it, that air is just going. So they put that plate there to mitigate the airflow that's going between the inside of the stove and the hopper. All right. Now I'm gonna start powering through some things, so forgive me. If you need to write down a question, ask me at the end, feel free. If you have some questions you wanna hold off till the end, I don't mind that either. So we went over cleaning, we went over our maintenance. Lastly, about cleaning, the glass. It is a ceramic heat-treated glass. We sell some Miko's Red Devil wood stove cleaner. It's amazing. This could be all sooted up and creosoted up. You spray, give it 10 seconds, and it'll literally just wipe off. You could also use water. So as a technician, I am supposed to tell you, you should never use any product that has ammonia in it. If you're sponsored by Windex and you need to use Windex, make sure it's the purple ammonia-free one. Otherwise, use a wood stove cleaner. You could also use a range stove cleaner for your kitchen. Those are also ceramic heat-treated glass. So, if you go to Walmart and you're already buying stove cleaner for that, you could use for this as well. In saying that, nothing beats how strong this is. I've seen some some crazy buildup on that glass, and it's literally, you know, maybe I have to spray it twice in white, but it gets it done. So.
Is it better than the ash itself? Because I've seen that do amazing things.
Yeah, so when I first started, we had a gentleman, Bob, who I thought he was playing a prank on me, and I was, you know, talking about the glass cleaning, and I was telling it to a customer. He goes, "Oh, you could just use the ash and water." And I was like, "You're messing with me, dude." And I've gone to his house. He's had a stove since he was 18. He's 30 now. His glass is way cleaner than, you know, a lot of people. And all he does is 3 paper towels. He wets 2 of them, squeezes the water out. The first one, he dips it in the ash. The reason this works is because ash is abrasive and corrosive. So then you use it to kind of just wipe off all the buildup on there. Use a second wet paper towel, just kind of clean it up. Third one that's dry, buff it out. Your glass looks good as new. Yep, so that's an option as well. Everyone's doing good?
Everybody looks so.
Alright, so no ammonia product on the glass. Cleaning, yearly cleaning, sweeping, which is something we would do in our cleaning. Not only do we clean the inside of the stove, back components, hopper, all that stuff, the glass, we will also clean your exhausting and venting. We sweep it, depending on if you have 3-inch, 4-inch venting. We have different rods, different, you know, heads for the rods. They attach to our drill, so we kind of use mechanical power, and, you know, if you have a rise, we use gravity in our vacuums to get it all cleaned up. The one thing I will say that I've heard from most people is, as far as myself and all the other people that either Derek, our manager's trained, or if I've helped train them, our goal when we go to your house is to leave the area we cleaned cleaner than when we arrived. Alright, so as much as we might be dealing with some dirty ash and soot, we put drop cloths down, we do everything we can to keep your things clean. If there's ever an issue, you have white curtains or something, let us know, we'll help you move them, we'll put something over it. You know, we want you guys to be 100% satisfied with everything we do. So if there's ever anything out of the ordinary, just let us know, and we'll make it work for you. Alright? So, as far as running the stove, most of us have analog controls, it looked like, and some of us have touchscreen. So quickly, the touchscreen is always going to come in room temperature mode. On the right, you have a temperature with arrows up and down that you can turn it up and down. That's your goal of what you want the room to be. The big temperature in the middle of it is what the actual room temperature is. All Herman stoves have this little wire behind it. It's called an RSP. It's a room sensing probe. It uses this last 1/4 inch to sense the temperature in the air. If you have a touchscreen stove, there's also an optional wireless sensor that you could put within 30 feet of the stove. Every wall you pass through, it's got to be 5 feet closer. So, you want to make sure, if you're going to use room temp, that this is hanging in the air. Because if you had a tile floor, tile's usually really cold. You set your stove to 70 degrees, you're going to walk in the room and be like, why is my room 95 degrees? Because it's reading 40 on the ground. It doesn't know that the room's 70 degrees. It's smart, it's just not as smart as some people want it to be. So, you make sure the end of this wire is hanging in the room. Some people tack it on the wall, some people put it through the door. There's lots of ways you can get to that, but that's what your goal is, to have that wire hanging in the air. Now, as far as the analog controls go, newer stoves have color coordination on them. I like it. I call it, it's Marco-proof instead of idiot-proof. So, orange is room temp. Anything that's orange on the touchscreen has to do with being in room temperature mode. Anything that's green on that control board has to do with constant burn. In the older stoves, it will say room, I think it says room temp and stove temp. The newer stoves say room and constant burn. Constant burn or stove temp, you're literally setting, you have numbers 1 through 7 on the left side of it that you could set. 1 is your smallest flame, they call it a pilot flame. It's really just enough to keep heat in the stove and keep heat in your pipe. 7 is going to be your biggest, highest flame in there. It feeds the most. The control that has the off switch, and it's either room temp or constant burn or stove temp, the further you have that switch from off, the higher this fan is going to blow at you. I'm so sorry, I keep forgetting about this glass. So the further you have it from off, the higher this is going to be blowing into your room, the higher RPMs that fan goes. The closer you have it off, the lower this fan will be. So you have a little control of the RPMs of this. So constant burn, you're setting the flame height, and as long as you have fuel, it's just going to burn. It's going to burn and burn and burn. You keep filling it, it'll go forever until you turn it off or you run out of fuel. Now, room temperature is going to use that last 1/4 inch of that wire to sense the room temperature in your room. You set the temperature you want it. Harman stoves have a ±4 differential. What that means is you set your stove to 70 degrees, stove is gonna kick on at 66, kick off at 74. And then bear in mind, you do have that half an hour, 45-minute shutdown phase, so by the time it's really off, it might be like 76, but that's the goal of what it's doing. So again, for this distribution fan, same controls, whether you're on room temp or constant burn. The further you are from off, the higher that fan's gonna blow in the room. Any questions about that?
Can you run it in manual mode also?
So the little toggle switch we're talking about.
I've
So,
been running mine in manual.
so manual mode, you have to light it yourself.
Right, but
Yep.
put the toggle switch on,
Yes.
light it, but once it's lit.
Once it's lit, you turn it off. So a trick with Harman stoves, for those of you who want to know, if you put your stove in room temp, set your temperature, the fire lights, you have the little toggle switch that controls your igniter. During your install, I tell you what that toggle switch does is that it controls the igniter in your circuitry. You usually want it on auto, that means your pilot or your igniter is going to self-light. The stove's going to light fire by itself. If it's on off or disabled or whatever the old ones say, this one says disabled, some of them say manual. If it's on that, it pulls the igniter out of the circuitry. The reason it could do that is you install your stove this year, 5 years down the road, your igniter dies. You call us in December when we're in the heat of our busy season, and we can't get out there for 4 weeks. You have 2 options. This is a 400-pound paperweight in your house, or you disable the igniter from the circuitry. You take a handful of pellets, you throw it in there till it's about at that even spot that I was talking to you about before. You get some pellet lighting gel, which we have behind Derek and Ron over there. You pour a little bit on those pellets. I like to get a screwdriver or something, kind of mix it up in there. Then what I'll do is you could either light the pellets, or sometimes I'll just light the screwdriver and then touch it to the pellets. Then you turn the stove on how you normally would. And then once the stove recognizes that there's heat, usually takes about 10 minutes or so, then everything will run normally. Now if you're gonna run it manually like that, and you have to light it manually, fill the pellets in there, put the lighter gel on it, mix it up, you light it. Don't close the door all the way at first. I always say keep it cracked a little bit. It just helps force the airflow, almost like a wood stove, go from the front into the stove, and it just helps it light a little better. Once you've really seen those pellets start lighting and catching well, close the door slowly. If you slam it, it's gonna turn that fire out, but close it nice and slowly, and then everything else should run normally. Now the trick that I was gonna tell you guys before, if your igniter's working perfectly fine, keep it in automatic, turn your stove on to room temperature. When you usually put it on room temp, your stove shuts on and off as it's calling for temperature it doesn't need it. Now in the dead of winter, a blizzard or something, say your stove met temperature shuts off, we get 4 feet of snow in that time, all of a sudden your direct venting is blocked with snow, your stove calls for heat, it's not gonna light because that pipe is blocked. If there was heat in that, it would have kept the snow from ever going around it, it would always have airflow. So if you light your stove in room temp, igniter's on automatic, stove lights, once there's fire and this fan's on, click that down to disable. What that will do is it'll make sure that your stove never shuts off. When it meets temperature, instead of fully shutting off, it'll go down to a pilot flame, a very minimal tiny flame, like I said before, just enough to keep a fire in there, keep some heat in the pipe, and then when it calls for temperature, it'll go back up to where you set it. All right, and then obviously if you want it off, you turn it off, put that switch back up to automatic. But they set that control board to be able to do that for places, Canada and Northeast that might get a little more snow. Down south they don't really care about that issue, but up here it's a good tip for when you have direct venting that's 2 feet off the ground.
It is 7 o'clock, so if we want,
All right.
I don't know, anything else you want to touch on?
So it is 7 o'clock. Are there any specific questions, concerns, anything you have in mind I didn't touch upon?
Anything like the stove, like unintended, like if I were to go to work and leave the stove lit, like is that okay? Or?
Thank you for asking that. So there are some things I didn't get into today. One of them is the safety features of these stoves. Harman, especially I'll be talking about right now, but all the stoves, Travis, Lopi, Ravelli, Comfort Built from Lowe's, they all have different safety features. But there's a vacuum switch which tells the stove it's at the correct negative pressure inside. If I put my hand up against the exhaust and block that, that vacuum switch would, tell the stove we're not at the right pressure, it would shut itself off. There are temperature sensors or snap discs, which are up against the hopper, so if there was ever a fire in the hopper, it would shut itself off. There's one in the back of the stove, so if it gets to too high of a temperature, it would shut itself off. The ESP probe in Harman stoves is set to a maximum of 450. If it ever reads that it's at that or higher, it shuts the stove off. So as far as running it during the day, yes, your stove's fine. You put that new RSP on it in the back, you're more than okay. My only issue with yours was you had that weird setup that I wasn't 100% comfortable with. But now that that's fine, yes, I am completely comfortable telling you that you go to work and leave that room. Okay? Anyone else? No? All right. Well, one more?
One quick one. I have a touch screen, and we've got the little cheat sheet didn't tell me this.
Okay.
There's two pictures of fans, orange and blue.
Yes.
Is orange the room fan? Or the blower?
Blue fan is the one all the way to the left.
On the left.
So that's the room fan.
Okay.
So when you turn the stove on, the orange one comes on first, right?
Yes.
That's your combustion fan.
That's combustion.
The
Okay,
combustion
okay.
fan is the first one to always come on. That one tells you the RPMs, the other one tells you a percentage.
Okay.
So the one with the percentage is your distribution fan.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
The XXV that I have.
Yes, sir.
Got it in no way. The temperature sensor, what do you call it?
RSP, the room sensing program?
Yeah, it's on the wall. What's the range of that? Like, in other words, I have it set at 75, so it shuts off at what time?
So if you set it to 75, it should be kicking on about 71, kicking off about 79.
The reason I'm asking is, a couple of times I noticed it shut it. Before the cold weather really set in, and it started getting warm, we shut the stove off. And, okay, so it gets cool in the house, we want to kick it back on, but it won't start until I wait a little while later, that it get a little colder in the house, and then it'll fire right up. And so I was wondering what the range was, so that it's like, okay, so say it's 72, but it's not gonna kick on until say down to 70, or whatever.
72, it would kick on at below 68.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If I have it set at 75, it's gonna kick on to
71 or below.
whatever.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying.
Yeah, so it's a plus minus 4 differential.
Yeah, even on the older ones.
On the older ones, yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir?
Yeah, for my stove now, once in a while I get a whistling sound when the auger.
Okay.
Press the heat bells, just cause that.
It could be a couple things. It could be airflow, and just the way air is moving through it. It's specifically only when it's spinning. It never happens when it's not spinning.
Right.
I would really have to get there and look at it. If it's more like a squeal sound, it could be the bearings going on the auger. So all the motors in the units have sealed bearing motors. So back in the day, you used to have grease fittings, you used to be able to maintain them. Nowadays, they have sealed bearing motors. What that means is there's no longer grease fittings, there's no longer maintaining them. The reason they switched to those is they are more efficient. You get a little bit, longer life out of them. You get higher RPMs out of a different, same size motor, but all of a sudden it's doing higher RPMs because it's a sealed bearing motor. In saying that, when they get to about, their half point to their latter half of life, they will start making some noises. There could be some squeaks, some squeals, stuff like that. Once it gets to like nails on a chalkboard and you're turning your TV up to 70 just to hear it, it's probably telling you it's about to seize. Then it either, completely stops making noise and all you hear is because it's no longer working, it's just seized up. Or you call us when it's nails on a chalkboard and we'll replace it and you never have to deal with it being seized up. Okay?
How long does the glass usually get off?
The glass?
No,
Oh, components, so that's a hard question because you may be burning 1 ton a year, they may be burning 6 tons, I may be burning 8 tons. But on average, I'll say if you're using your stove as a primary source of heat, you should be getting at least 3 to 5 years on every component. Now, in saying that, your auger is an intermittent component. It's not like the combustion fan that's going from literally startup till half an hour after shutdown. It's only going when called for, so those are a little more rare than, say a combustion fan or a distribution fan. But, I would say anything past 5 years is a gift, 5 to 8 years with those.
I was gonna ask the same question.
Same question, you got it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, my mother has Carmen,
Mhm.
this one, and
That's all. So she must be treating it right, getting her cleanings and
And
all
she
that.
uses it as a.
Primary source of
primary
heat?
source.
It's awesome. She gets her yearly cleanings, all that stuff. Good. Yep. Like I said, maintenance is key. You know, I've seen stoves that are out there that are only 5 years old, and we're replacing every component in it, and we haven't seen them since the day of install. I see some people who we see at least once a year, and you know, I'm changing their combustion fan, and there's different. I could tell if it's an older fan just because how they're built's a little different. And I'll make a comment about, oh, you have the older motor, and there's like, oh, that's the original motor from 2002. That's awesome. You know, like I said, maintaining it's key with those. You know, yearly cleanings, your weekly and monthly cleanings will help.
Regarding Harmon, have you seen any issues with getting parts for the older stoves? Or, because nowadays, you know, something gets 10 years old and you can't get parts for it anymore.
So the thing I like about these guys is whether you have a P43, P61, P68, absolute, insert, combustion motor's the same, they just use a different impeller blade, which is that fan blade up here in front. Distribution fans, there's about 3 that they all use. Some of them have 2, some of them have 1, but they all use the same part. So whether you have an XXV from 2008, I think is when they started, or if you 2004.
I got 6.
2006, okay. And then, so I think it would have been 2004 would have been the 25th year anniversary. But whether you have, you know, one from then or one from now, the components are very similar. You know, so as far as Harmons go, that's not an issue. There are some other brands, you know, if you bought a stove from us in 1980 and we no longer sell it, I can promise you that. But as far as Harmons go, no, parts are not a problem. Now that the whole COVID thing has been settling a little bit, we don't have shipping issues really anymore. We're getting parts usually within a month. So we're doing much better with that. Anyone else? All right, well, I just want to say, first, if you haven't grabbed the sheet over there, there is a piece of paper. At least fill out your name, cell phone number, and your email address. If you are not on our email list, we can add you that way. If you have any comments, questions, concerns about today, put them on there. If you put your email, I could send you back an answer, or if it's just a statement telling us, you know, something we can improve in this class or anything like that, we'll try and implement that as best as we can.
Yes.
Thank you for being patient with us. This is our first class that we're doing like this, so hopefully we'll be able to streamline this and get this going a little better in the future. And besides that, we thank you all for coming out here. You know, we couldn't have Higgins without all of you guys. All right, so we appreciate you coming out here. Coming to our class.